All right, all right, all right. Jordan Sheridan live from the United Corporations of America. Status Coup in the house with friend of the coup, Steve Grumbine of Real Progressives. He's got the logo behind him. Um, I wanted to have you, you know, and by the way, smash that like button, thumbs up button right under the live stream. More people that press like, more people that will see this very live stream. Um, I wanted to have you because I like staying in my wheelhouse. I think there's a lot of Joe schmoes on the left that kind of pretend that they know stuff about things but don't know shit. So you know, foreign people ask me, Jordan, why don't you cover more foreign policy? Well, first of all, I'm exhausted. Covering domestic corruption is more than enough. But it's not my expertise and it's not what I cover. I know a lot about a lot of things, but I'm not an expert on Afghanistan or Iraq or Iran, Venezuela, Russia. That's why I watch, people like Abby Martin and Lee Camp and others. But yesterday, we were lucky enough to speak with a U.S. Afghanistan veteran who actually became a conscientious objector, which means he was part of the U.S. Force in Afghanistan and then refused to continue fighting out of what he was seeing there, which was essentially us destroying Afghanistan for profit. So he and I spoke a lot about, this withdrawal and, people on top of airplanes and, the threat to Afghanistan women and, what's true and what's not. So definitely check out that live interview with U.S. Afghanistan vet Rory Fanning. But I wanted to have you on because, the media is certainly not going to cover. They don't care about the price tag. They only care about how you're going to pay for it. If it, helps people, go to a doctor or, get educated, that price tag matters. For this, unlimited. But I wanted to talk to you because honestly, I'm hearing from the usual suspects, this was a colossal 20-year waste of taxpayer money. This was a colossal, let's first start with the lives lost, not just U.S. soldiers, but innocent Afghanistan people. But I keep hearing this, and Colin, if you could put up just that article with the price tag, but keep hearing this about, $1 trillion of taxpayer money wasted. And, right here, the war in Afghanistan cost America $300 million per day for 20 years with big bills yet to come. And that number is from this week. So I've always said, taxpayer money didn't cover this $1 trillion boondoggle. And frankly, I think it was a lot more than $1 trillion. The Pentagon has, let's just say unique accounting, i.e. no accounting. It was a lot more than $1 trillion, folks. But I wanted to have you on to dispel the myth that this was $1 trillion in taxpayer money. And then connect it to everything we don't have in America that we easily could have. But before I do that, Steve, Colin has put together this handy dandy montage of, our intelligent corporate Democrats and corporate media, them, feeding us the birds and the bees on fiscal responsibility. Colin, if you could toss to that.
Sounds wonderful. Who doesn't want to have free care? But the reality is, in order to finance this, people are going to have to pay more in taxes, in payroll taxes, in corporate income taxes, in order to fund this free care.
Explain where they're going to get $1 trillion a year. $1 trillion. I don't even know how many zeros it is. Mm-hmm. It's a big number.
Those numbers dramatically underestimate the increased spending associated with providing everybody free care.
If they got that through and by some miracle, there was an epiphany that occurred, and some miracle occurred that said, okay, it's passed, then you got to look at the cost. I want to know, how did they find the $35 trillion?
And when I hear you speak, I get really excited. But I remember that Trump excited his base with a promise to build a wall with no real plan to pay for it. Your plan for free college tuition and Medicare for all seems like a way to excite the Democratic base, but with no real plan to pay for it. Now, how is your position in your campaign different than what Donald Trump did?
Is that true? Did a study funded by the Koch brothers actually indicate that Medicare for All would save the American people trillions of dollars?
No, it's not true, at least not according to the author of the study. Now, while it's true that the Koch brothers have given millions of dollars to the Mercatus Center at George Mason University, and an AP investigation earlier this year suggested that the Koch brothers do have control and influence over the hiring and firing of professors, we should note, for whatever it's worth, the authors of this study said the Koch brothers did not influence them in any way.
But it is expensive. Who pays is very important. What are the benefits that come in there? So I would think that hopefully, as we emerge into the election year, the mantra will be more health care for all Americans, because there is a comfort level that some people have with their current private insurance that they have.
Oh boy. Oh boy. So before we get to that smorgasbord, remember, smash that like button. 170 watching already. We got 96 likes. We need every last one of you. Smash that damn like button. Share this live stream. Keep those super chats coming. I'm going to read them at the end. I've tried to start reading them towards the end so we don't break up the flow here. But Steve, first of all, my favorite part of that, thank you, Colin, for doing that. He had the unfortunate.
Good job, man.
Unfortunate, and real progressives, you're welcome to steal it. He had the misfortune of looking through that dreadful stuff. But my favorite part is when Jake Tapper says, misleading because the author says so. You mean the author of the right-wing funded study that, after being called out for his study showing savings, retroactively said, no, not true. So misleading. Anyway, Steve, I wanted to start with, let's be clear. We're not minimizing. A lot of people died. A lot of people, missing legs, other wounds from this war. You're also talking about the PTSD rampant in the American military, PTSD of Afghanistan citizens who had their country overrun by an invading force. So I don't want to just boil it down to dollars and cents, but on the dollars and cents, did taxpayer money pay for this? Again, it's not 1 trillion, but let's just use the number they give us. $1 trillion boondaggle in Afghanistan?
No, I mean, taxes literally had absolutely nothing to do with paying for any of this, from the hats the military wears, down to the boots, down to the knobs on the planes. Taxpayer dollars didn't fund a single nickel of this. And, this normally would piss people off just because they're so wedded to that idea that taxes fund federal spending. But it gets worse than that, because as you saw in that montage, they use this lie as a way of disciplining society, as a way of keeping us from asking for more. And as you see largely from the progressive movement and others, there's some movement. People are starting to understand that it's a lie, but they still fall back on, if we would have just not spent money there, we could have had that money to spend over here. Or, and the fact is that these are all keystrokes. I mean, literally, you're sitting there on a typewriter at the Fed and you're typing in digits into the Treasury's accounts, and the Treasury spends that money. It's not like some fat stacks that have been put on a pallet somewhere and they're just waiting for the government to spend, and you look in the vault and realize, oh crap, we're down to the last couple bundles, Breaking Bad money over there, so we're going to have to print more money. It doesn't work that way. And so while on one hand, the Afghanistan war was a tremendous waste of natural resources, waste of human labor, waste of human life, all kinds of horrible things, it was never a quote unquote waste of money. See, you and I, when we spend money, we have this finite pool of money. And if we waste money, we can't eat the next day. However, when it comes to the federal government, it is literally, get all that nonsense about the Rothschilds out of your mouth, put it over here, and let's just focus for a minute that government checks don't bounce, period. And so the government has been spending money into existence since the dawn of time, really. But it's right here, right now. that people like us, activists, economists that are what we call heterodox, are starting to get that message out there further and further and further, thanks to the great work of Stephanie Kelton in The Deficit Myth. If you haven't read it, I suggest you get it. And also, if you look to show the proof, to show the trajectory of gaining advancement, we even had John Yarmouth of, I think it's the Senate Budget Committee, come out and say point blank, or was it House? I don't know. I'm not sure where he sits. But bottom line is, Yarmouth went out there on C-SPAN and gave a clinic on the fact that the government is not like your household. The government has the money, can do whatever, and regarding with healthcare even. So there are people that are getting this. Sadly, the activists in our community, all you got to do is put up one of these stupid memes on Facebook or Twitter that says something like, our hard-earned tax dollars paid for Donald Trump to go golfing, and they get a million people clicking, yeah, or I'm willing to pay more in taxes to have health care, aren't you? When in reality, it's not necessary. It's virtue signaling with basically an ephemeral reality. It's vapor. It's a lie. It's a myth, like the coal in the stocking at Christmas time. So
Right.
No, absolutely no tax dollars went to funding the Afghanistan war.
Well, I also want to know if you could put this back up, Colin. So the war in Afghanistan cost America $300 million per day for 20 years, with big bills yet to come. I don't have the span to do the math on that. If somebody else wants to do it for me, 300 million times 20, 300 million. What is that? 365 days times 20. If somebody can figure that out, but
it's like 600 billion something.
Yeah. So if $300 million is a lot of money. Maybe not for the federal government, but in general, it's a lot of money. And under the montage Colin just showed, these Biden, Pelosi, these think tankers that are on CNN, they're talking about we have to find the money for these things, for, whether it be Medicare for all, other things. Even now, this back and forth about the bipartisan infrastructure bill and this negotiation and kind of who's going to blink first, where you have these 9 Democrats who are saying, we want the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which, by the way, is really a privatization scheme. We want that immediately voted on. And once that passes, then we'll consider the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill, which obviously is nonsense. They just want this bipartisan infrastructure bill, and then they're going to kill or dramatically lower this $3.5 trillion bill. But the way it's discussed in the media, the way it's discussed by these politicians is, well, we can't afford all this. Well, if you can't afford all this, where did you find the money to spend $300 million a day in Afghanistan? I'd like to know. The Washington Post, one of the rare good stories they did something, I think it was last year, saying that literally military generals were mandated to spend this money daily. Doesn't matter on what, just spend the money. So how could those two things be true? How can it be that, we got to look under the bed and under the cupboard to find the money for the infrastructure, for expanding Medicare, this and that. But in Afghanistan, there's an unlimited money tree.
Well, I think the big thing to understand, and I hate to get esoteric, but we're going to bring it back for a minute. And it's like you have 2 ways of getting money into the system, and only 2 ways. Number one is the federal government spends that money into existence and gets the economy going. It chooses where it spends that money. And the federal government has got a patriotic green card, if you will, to just go with the military. And so spending money into the economy to keep it floating, they use and do more than to enrich their friends, of course, but to keep the economy going, since social spending is such a taboo thing with even regular rank and file blue dog Democrats. And then you've got the Republicans who naturally just revile anything that looks like social spending. So you've got federal government spending, but then you've got this other thing, and that is bank lending. Bank lending is not the same thing as government spending, because what banks are doing is basically giving you an IOU denominated in the government's unit of account. When the government spends that money into existence, it doesn't have to be paid back. It's just money, right? That will circulate through the economy. But when you take out a bank loan, you've got to pay it back. And so when that bank loan is paid off, or when it's defaulted upon, it zero outs the reserves in the back end that created it to begin with, and it nets to zero. When the federal government spends it into it, that is called debt. So the national debt is nothing but the money supply. Okay. So if you think about this, going back to the 300 million, they got to spend it. They got to spend it. Part of it is, number one, the way federal budgets work and the way government budgets in general work. If you're allotted a certain amount of money and you don't spend it, when they go to give you your budget the next time, they'll reduce it because you didn't spend the money they gave you. That's number one. Number two is because there's a reason for that money. It's not just what it looks like funding war. It's being used as a way of getting money into the economy. And until we can make social spending acceptable and not taboo and not welfare or not whatever, they're going to continue to use the military as the place to spend for the first resort. And so I think that this is a very important thing for your listeners and so forth to really begin to understand, is that the federal government spends money first onto something, and that's how it gets into the economy.
Right.
And so that's what's going on here. And the money, the game that they're playing is this austerity game. And I want you to understand this very, very clearly. We focus on the bombs, we focus on the planes, we focus on the tanks, we focus on the death and destruction by weapons. But we always, always, always pretend that being fiscally prudent, fiscally responsible is somehow or another a noble and good and just thing, when in reality, it's just war by other means. We're talking about murdering the poorest of us, okay? The most vulnerable of us. And so it's very important to understand the language and the messaging there is a tool for disciplining us, to keeping us in line, to keeping us from asking for more, because we believe we're broke and we can't do it. So that's the messaging over here. But you also, going back to what I said earlier, remember, the average person is still, even people that have heard me say this 100 times, there are still people out there that believe that their hard-earned tax dollars are being wasted on Israel, that their hard-earned tax dollars are being wasted on Trump's golf trips or so-and-so's this or that. And it's not true. Your taxes serve to keep inflation down, to create a necessary obligation payable only in the government's unit of account, so that you still need the dollar. So the tax creates the necessary means for you to need that dollar, and it creates buyers and sellers, and thus it kickstarts the economy. That's what the tax is for. It's like the lubricant to keep it all running. Without the tax, you end up with the Confederacy.
Well, also, a few things. One, $80 billion it would cost for free public college tuition. That's what Bernie ran on. Guess what they spend $100 billion on a year?
Oh, boy.
Military recruitment, going into high schools and, wherever the hell they go to hoodwink and manipulate 16, 17, and 18-year-olds. $100 billion they spend just on military recruitment. So $80 billion for free public college. But I think you also touched on something. And remember, smash that like button. Got 300 people watching. Let's get it up. Everybody, press that like button, share this live stream, all that. You touched on something. Dwight Eisenhower warned about this military industrial complex, but essentially war and, the manufacturing of these weapons has become a whole industry, not just for the defense contractors, but for American jobs. So Virginia, look at Virginia, particularly the northern part of the state. It's all defense contractors. Other parts of the state, factories, this and that, create, a lot of parts for whether it be planes, military tanks, you name it. So part of this endless, let's just spend it, is because a lot of America's economy has been built on war, even if there is no threat to us. And this notion, by the way, let's just think about it common sense wise. If we're ending a war of 20 years that we were spending $300 million a day, why would we then increase the military budget by $25 billion if this big overhead is now coming off the books? So it just seems to be kind of a big charade, because we don't need all this money for defense, and B, clearly we have the money for everything else. It's that the donors who, are running the United Corporations of America, they want people to think they can't have it all. They want
Absolutely.
people to think that there's only finite resources, because if the people got even a little bit more, that might open the floodgates for a lot more, meaning less for the Jeff Bezos and so on.
There is a scarcity of real resources. That I want to make perfectly clear. And that is the only real constraint that the government has, is real resources, from labor to lumber to water to petroleum to whatever else. That is a very, very real and scarce resource, and it requires very real labor to uncover. So each of these things are scarce in their own way. One thing that is not scarce is the pieces of paper that we call US dollars, that are merely a tax credit that we create out of thin air. But one of the big things that you said that is really powerful, and it goes back to a documentary, I think it was called Why We Fight. And what it did, it showed that, like, I can't remember what the example was, but it was like a airplane that was on the books for, it may have been the fighter, that never gets out of the hangar fighter, the F-35. But what they showed was that they have the button for XYZ produced in Vermont. They got the seat leather in the Mexico or New Mexico. They've got the helmets made in Washington State. They got, each of these things is built throughout the country. So what happens when you go to talk about cutting military spending? Every state knows that if you reduce that spending, you're reducing their jobs in their state, because they are highly dependent. Every single state in the country is highly dependent on government military spending. And that has largely become our economy. That, and you think about the financialization that has come, the unproductive economy. All of these things have become our way of doing things. So the idea of giving health care away for free, even government paid, not taxpayer paid, but government paid, with public money, they cannot fathom that. Because if you do that takes away the money, the leverage they have over our lives. And that's what this debate is really about, because all of those entities, they still get paid. It's just a matter of who the payer is. If it's the government, then they lose control over us. If it's put on us, like, that's why I'm so against the UBI, because by taking the power and putting it onto the people to have to go out and find deals to spend that money properly, what you end up stuck with is some poor sap trying to find a good deal when all he wants to do is eat. And so this right here is another one of those tricks that they make you think they're doing you a favor, when in reality what they're doing is they're preventing those real bold programs and bold services to come to the poor, and saying, here you go, here's $1,000 now, that's your payoff, now get the hell out of here, Mr. Poor Person. And that's my gripe. So,
well, also, I mean, I think it kind of goes, it's a similar thing to the coal industry. There's a significant portion of the economy that's reliant on these military jobs, weapon making, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, the government has the power, FDR did it, to spend trillions if they wanted to on government jobs programs in weatherizing buildings, in wind, solar, retrofitting, buildings. In there's a whole list of jobs that could be created for green energy, for drastically lowering carbon emissions, these kind of things. Could it happen tomorrow? No. Could it happen relatively quickly? Yes, because the government has the money, and they could take those folks out of these weapons industries and shift them to something that might actually be useful Same thing with the
Amen.
coal miners. The coal miners striking in Alabama, I interviewed some of them. They were open to whatever job will feed their family. It's not that they're like in love and married with the substance of coal. They're in love. They want to have dignity at work, have some benefits, have a decent wage, whatever it is. Some of them, there's a rich tradition in the coal industry and coal mining connected with the labor movement, but it's not so much connected to the physical manifestation of coal, just like these weapons makers. I'm sure a lot of these weapons makers working fucking hate themselves. So, I mean, isn't it so that if part of this is the economy is heavily reliant on this defense, we could pour money and invest money into shifting them to more productive, less deadly things.
Absolutely. But that's not really the point of it all, right? The problem here is that you're just like, we've talked about in the past. We've got the boomer generation. We've got the folks that have been tied to mainstream media their whole lives, that have a narrative they're up against. And what is the narrative? What is the one apple pie and the thing that got Trump elected? We're talking about that Make America Great Again thing. And so people usually look at that and go back to the military as kind of their, we celebrate the 4th of July. We celebrate Veterans Day. Everything's about love your vets. I support the vets. I support the troops. So these are things where the skids are greased to just spend on it. But when you look at the other stuff, you end a bunch of people who are like, you should have made better choices. Hey, that's not my problem. You didn't save up for healthcare. Hey, that's not my problem. You didn't save up for college, etc. And so it's this going narrative that we, the people, are fighting amongst ourselves, not even dealing with the oligarchy, not even dealing with any of these, lobbyists or whatever. The propaganda war has already been won. Now it's up to us. And this is why I stay persistently on this topic, my niche, if you will, because if it's not beaten in, if we don't change that, I mean, this is being echoed in churches. It's being echoed in schools. It's on your sitcoms. It's on Roseanne. Every time you watch television, the concept of taxpayer dollars, the concept of, making better choices. And the only thing wrong with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money, things like that. This is all deeply woven into the American psyche. And so the only way to get past that is to play on patriotism and spend that money into the military, which then those soldiers, them and other folks then spend it on, the trickle down, right? This is how they view the trickle down, and they use it through an underpaid military that's putting their life on the line for pieces of paper and tokens and access to college someday, and maybe some discount on a home, a veteran home or something like that. So it's,
by
it's
the way,
a real,
we haven't even pointed out the 800 to 1,000 bases we have everywhere and the people employed there.
Absolutely. And it's all a way of infusing the economy with money. In fact, some of these bases, interestingly enough, they're not really doing war. They're just sort of there. And so in that case, a lot of them spend money into the local economy as well in those areas. So there's people, even in those other societies, even though they want us the hell out of there, they've become dependent on us spending money into their economy as well. And so there's this weird, like, parasitic, symbiotic relationship where when we plant these things out there, it's like every time you put a Walmart into a community, you may despise Walmart, but after every single one of the local mom and pop shops close up, you become dependent on Walmart to serve your grocery needs, to serve your Christmas shopping or your whatever. So I think this is one of those really important dynamics that are baked so deeply into the duck and cover mind of the 60s and 70s and still playing out to this day. I think that if we don't come to grips with that mindset and start doing a vigilant way of getting this message out to people, they're going to continue to think all the wrong things, and we will never have health care. And, interestingly enough, we're going through this state-based fight right now where people are trying to push for state-based Medicare. Well, if you haven't heard anything else that I've ever said in my entire life, hear this. The federal government spends that money into existence. The states must tax their way to their things, must buy bonds. And you've seen the decimation in Flint, Michigan alone with state budgets and local budgets. Why anyone would try to put that on 50 states when, if you look, I don't know if you're familiar with this, there's something called the CAFR, which is the Comprehensive Annual Fiscal Report. And it shows the fiscal position of every state in the United States. And if you look at those CAFR reports, I will bet you dollars to donuts that so much of what they are dealing with is part of the military industrial complex, fueling their local economy and so forth. But many, many, many states in this country are straight up one bad moment away from destitution and having to be bankrupt. And so the federal government could fix that instantly, just like they could have fixed Puerto Rico and just like they could have fixed the pipes in Flint, Michigan. So what we have here is a fundamental stop worrying about the instances and start worrying about how the macroeconomic system works so that we can then turn that and weaponize that and help get real progressives elected, help organize on the streets to get people understanding that you've been lied to. You've been lied to this whole time, and in good faith, in your own way, you've always thought it was your hard-earned tax dollar funding, Bibi and his incursion into the Palestinian territories and so forth. No, it's our federal government making a decision to do this. It's not your tax dollars. It's literally making a decision to do each of these things that you see. Poverty is a political choice. War is a political choice. Both of them are an economic choice. And we have there's no limit to the amount of money we can spend. There are only consequences. And so the consequences of not spending on the people are a really bitter, angry society without hope and full of despair and leaving their kids untended and running off to work 2 and 3 jobs, or we're going to war. So for us, all these things we said we wanted, they're all possible. And if we stop being cynical and start getting downright serious, if you ever look at S1W, the dancers with Public Enemy, you see those guys just as straight, their backs are straight, their face is straight, they're looking dead at you. They're all about the business. We need to get just exactly like that, Black Panther style all the way. And outside of the electoral system, organize for power long-term and get these thoughts and ideas as public knowledge away from the propaganda. And then let that infect the electoral system. Let that infect the media. Let that infect our schools. Let's each one teach one amongst ourselves. And then we can bring an end to that by making it acceptable to focus on domestic policy and a green energy and a green policy of sustainability instead of focusing on destroying the world so that we can rebuild it again and spend that money. Each time we spend money, it's not like we're going in debt. It's fattening those wealthy groups that have access to key contracts and key sweetheart deals that are really how that money even gets into the economy. And that is why the wealth inequality in this country is so radically disproportionate.
Right. And I should have said this, by the way, earlier, but quick promo. Jen and I will be joining tomorrow night, Real Progressives video. I think it's your viewer monthly.
RP Live. We used to call it our national outreach call, and we realized that wasn't really the game here because it started to be in something that it wasn't. So we decided, hey, let's just turn this national outreach call into RP Live. And we have one person or a couple people or an organization or whatever that we get to come in that we consider a fellow traveler and a partner or a friend in the space. And we have them present what they're doing and talk to our audience. And, and I'm really thankful that you took us up on it because you're a great guest.
I've been known to provide in-depth monologues. So yeah, that's at 9:00 tomorrow, right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay. So I wanted to also bring up, I saw somebody in the chat say poverty draft, because all of what you're talking about is literally killing people because essentially the government not providing or spending the money into existence for healthcare, jobs, safer communities, et cetera, is leaving 17 and 18-year-olds with no better choice, no better opportunity to then go fight in Afghanistan. And they're dying or being seriously wounded or having their minds messed up. So the lack of actual, spending, and actually creating, executing the system for working people. They do spend the money for rich people and for the defense industry, which we're talking about, and for the fossil fuckers, they'll find the money for those things. But the willful choice not to spend the money or to create this, false narrative that, well, we got to account for the money. We got to, cross every, T, and we got to, do a full accounting of where we're getting the money from and how we're going to pay for it. That's leading to, let's just be real, a significant amount of young Black kids, young Latino
Yes.
kids.
Yes.
A lot of those soldiers are Black, brown, poor whites too, to have or think they have no better option and say, you know what, that military, maybe they'll cover my student debt or help towards my student debt. Great lifetime benefits, safe security for my family, what have you. So it is a poverty draft.
What do you think about the idea? And just think about this for a minute. What do you think about the idea?
Sorry to cut you off, Steve. I just want to tell the audience, breaking news. Texas Governor Greg Abbott test positive for the coronavirus. Can't, listen, don't want to, it's a deadly disease, just because I'm a good human being, wish him well, but serves you fucking right. Anyway, go ahead.
No, but
if you have any thoughts, I don't know. But
no,
Greg Abbott, by the way, Texas right now is overrun with COVID cases and hospitals are filled with children. That governor just got COVID.
I'm not going to touch COVID right now. I've had it. It was devastating, and I'm disgusted by people that don't take it seriously. Simple as that.
I just want to tell the audience the breaking news. Anyway, go on.
So, but we talked about how the military is the way that we spend money into the economy. It literally starts from nowhere, from the wellspring, keystroke into the military. That's where it starts. Well, guess what? Everything you just said, we need an underclass. Why do we need an underclass? Because we've created a new cottage industry called the private prison complex. We've created a new cottage industry for, all things drug war, and so the reason why it's taking so long to get through the drug war even is because there's still people trying to figure out how they can profit from the new paradigm. And before they release the profit hounds into that world, they've got to make sure that they've made it so that the right people get to make that money. It has nothing to do with like protecting lives and stuff like that. The people downstream that are like just parroting what they hear, they probably mean well. They probably really believe this stuff, right? Because it's repeated constantly. But the reality is that once again, why do you militarize the police? Because it's another way of spending money into these things to fatten their coffers. And so they take these massive amount of military spending they put over here, and they're like, well, we flat out don't have enough soldiers even to make this work. Why don't we give it to the police? And so, people try to make it more about like, oh, they're trying to control us. They're trying to do this. Yes, there is an element of control. But what they're really doing is they're fattening the wallets of those people that get that first dollar from Congress. So when you look at something like eliminating, the pay-fors in healthcare, you look at getting rid of, student debt, you look at making college free, you look at generating a Green New Deal. What in the world would be preventing these energy companies from switching over to green energy? They're still trying to figure out how to profit from it. They're still trying to how to get out of the other stuff so they can suck the last bits of, that sunset profit out before they move to the other side. They're still thinking we've got time, And so all of this, each one of these things, it's not just greed. Greed's an easy word to throw around. And if you don't want to know more than just saying greed, okay, I guess. But there's so much more to that thing. It's an entire system that is predicated upon where we spend that money, because that's all economics is the getting real resources moved around in different ways to allocate and arrange society in a certain way. And so what have they chosen? They've chosen to balkanize society with the haves and the have-nots. And you see it exacerbated in the fact that almost every one of these industries is based on somebody being a bad guy, and it's usually someone very poor, someone very brown, and someone maybe gay or something, somebody that is in a vulnerable position, the elderly, you name it, that really can't fight back. And you see this being done in the housing industry. You see this being done in a multitude of ways where the rich get richer and the poor get poor. And again, that's a great bumper sticker, but there's a whole mechanism behind that. There's a whole ecosphere that they've put together to build this Gordian knot, this Rube Goldberg machine of insanity that continues to pump out profits for the very wealthy and using us as the thing to point at for what we've got to protect against. That poor person over there taking your food, they're bad. We've got to put them in jail. Well, they're taking food because you haven't given them any goddamn food. They're hungry. So I think that really is the issue here, is understanding each of these things as an industry, and each of these things gets that first dollar from the federal government. And that's why it's important to repurpose the public purpose so that that first dollar is spent on things that society values, that makes society better, that helps our children, that helps our elderly, that helps all of us, so that people aren't forced to make tough decisions during a pandemic and they're paid to stay home. You know what I mean? Like these are all things that could have been done had we valued society, but we didn't. And part of that was because of these myths that we have to disabuse people of. I mean, think about how much time has been wasted hearing people talking about the Rothschilds. I mean, this is a ridiculous Alex Jones trope that unfortunately has sidelined 3/4 of our movement in absolute buffoonery. If we got them out of this insanity, and again, that's part of that crack pottery down at the bottom trying to make their niche, okay? But the top counts on us to be distracted and stupid, distracted and uneducated, distracted and clueless. And they play upon that. And that's how all these things happen. And then the real trick is to make you feel like they did a good thing for you. And you walk away, you're like, what the hell just happened? They just made me think it's good to castrate myself, you know, and that's what they've done. So I think that it's important. It's really in our hands. It's really up to us to get that word out there. But you know, I really think it'd be great to have a drinking game. And every time Pelosi or one of those people says one of these absolutely moronic things, have a drink. Or maybe we do a little game together and we talk every time she says it and say, here's the real answer. Here's the real answer. Get on Twitter. Here's the real answer. Here's the real answer. But instead, right now, I think that it's almost too much to ask for people to delve in at that level because they're so propagandized. But for those of us, I'm talking to you guys out there that are MMT enlightened, it's up to us to help each other out and to prop each other's work up and get it out there, because we are up against forces, insane forces that don't want this information out there.
And last question before I read super chats, because some of the super chats are questions for you. You know, you and I were talking before this about, you know, frankly, let's just say, call it what it is. There's a growing portion of the left basically leading us on a march to nowhere. I mean, channel after channel, video after video. That's just, I don't know what else to say. It just basically rage venting our anger, frustration, cynicism with politicians or other YouTube shows. You know, a lot of it is based on legit grievances, but nothing actually behind it. I mean, no strategy to actually get us Medicare for all, or gain some leverage, or seize power, or get some of the things you and I have talked about. Essentially just kind of infotainment for clicks. I mean, that's just the truth. A lot of people don't like me saying it, but that's what it is. It's entertaining to watch. You know, shows doing it are getting, you know, 1,000 live viewers. Us covering substantive stuff, much less. But what isn't happening amongst those shows, viewers, is any form of organizing. You know, I was forced to vote, okay? But like, we don't need to talk about it into perpetuity. I was for it. I still am for forcing votes and leveraging your vote. But that's only kind of like one little strategy over here. None of these people are talking about organizing economic boycotts in their communities against certain companies or institutions. None of these people, I mean, Jen and I just broke one of the biggest government cover-ups of the 21st century, complete media silence about the Flint water cover-up we just broke. None of these people are organizing, going after advertisers for these media outlets, showing up outside CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, local media, because your local media is part of why you have a new Gilded Age and why what's actually happening in your communities is buried and the truth's not getting out. So there's just a lot of ranting and raving under the guise of like, this is actually organizing, or what do they say? Like, we're making them fear us. No, you're not making them do anything other than marginalize you and dismiss you and laugh at you. But like, I mean, it can't really get any worse right now as far as the planet is burning. You see what's going on in Afghanistan. Income inequality is getting much worse. All this bullshit about jobs are roaring back. Yeah, jobs for who? It's shitty paying jobs, non-living wage jobs. Most of these impressive job reports are retail and hospitality, which are non-paying, non-living wage, shitty benefits. I could go on. All of this is going on, but the left, yeah, I get it. You know, we're kind of leaderless right now. People are despondent. People are angry. People don't want to be, fooled by certain politicians, whatever. But there's zero organizing. There's zero strategizing for anything.
Yep.
And you've talked about we need to organize outside of electoral politics. I personally think nothing is mutually exclusive. You could organize outside of electoral politics and support a candidate that might be good for us. You could build a third party while voting or potentially supporting a candidate. Gasp, who has a D next to their name, if they agree with us on policy, have a good track record, seem to walk the walk, be willing to fight. So I wanted to ask you, because you've diagnosed the problem correctly, but I don't really see a coordinated left movement. I see workers starting to get organized, but I don't see the left getting organized on anything other than ranting and raving online.
It's interesting. So one of the primary reasons why I haven't done nearly as many videos lately is because we're trying to build the project management systems in the back end of our organization. Pretty freaking boring to the average activist that just wants to put their fist in the air and get the selfie and put the sign up and so forth. Building a project management system, what are we, some corporation? Well, we're up against incredibly organized groups, well-funded. The only way that you're getting anything done is if you build long-term power outside of, in my opinion, the dual tracking, but outside of the electoral system, because what you see happen every 4 years, every 2 years, is these pop-up campaigns. And you've got tons of people that'll show up in the streets. It's the same people, if you'd stayed organized on the side, that would be ready to go at each campaign. But instead, no. They have to get campaign driven. And then what happens? You have these leadership vacuums, these voids. And then you've got the clamoring for who's going to be top daddy and who's going to be this. And then you get the infighting. And all of this is ego and piss poor planning. Okay. It takes a project manager to freaking get the tools and techniques down so that the team, the people that aren't into all that, can actually have structural support to do those massive things. But instead, we're living and dying on flash mobs and instead of sustaining power. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we don't have unions. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we've forgotten how to do real union action. But I think a lot of it also is changes in society, changes in technology, and so forth, that we no longer have that union hall to organize, and we're now online. And so Facebook, Twitter, all these different things, YouTube, have really installed these algorithms to suppress our ability to organize. And so you've got a lot of frustration built in there. And then you got the worst thing. And my God, this may be the worst of it all. The cliques don't respect you unless you're the leader of that clique. And then if you are the leader of an alternate clique, then you're persona non grata. And of course, you're duly obligated to shit talk and slam like a 10th grader in high school playing games at a food fight in the food court, right? So to me, so much of this is the oligarchy doing its thing, keeping us divided as they've done since the course of history. But I think a lot of it also is there's an awful lot of ego and a lot of desire to be the top dog, to chase clout. And we've seen partners of ours that have gone out there and literally supported people who are diametrically opposed to us, like we're not watching them do it. Because what's happening is that people are in the midst of that clout chasing. Who's the hot hand today? No principles, no driven purpose of getting things done. They just clout chasing. And you see it in all sorts of Twitter wars right now. I know something happened the other day, I think with Jen and Fred Hampton leftists or something like this. And now all of a sudden, this is the latest thing. The time before that, it was Fiorella and Kyle Kalinske with the, picture, the whatever. Each time it's always something like that.
And by the way, Steve, I mean, spring chicken. I'm not.
No, man.
This is not a new phenomenon. The left has been eating itself alive for decades. Whenever there has been momentum, for decades, the left has eaten itself alive. I don't really care how you define the left. I don't really care who's a real progressive or a fake progressive or whatever. The part of the political spectrum that, defines itself as left has basically, whenever it's gotten some momentum, because contrary to the selective amnesia we have, because people have selective amnesia, like less than 2 years ago, Bernie Sanders was on the brink of becoming the Democratic nominee. Right. Okay. 4 years before that, there was no left movement in America. So we're not as far off as people think. Right now, there are Alabama workers, Kansas workers who successfully just did strikes and got concessions. Amazon workers in New York, I've been covering, are scaring the living shit out of Amazon because they actually are organized and have an actual strategy. Again, Bernie was close. There are no moral victories, but if he would have done a few things differently, he might be president right now. So to me, everybody likes a food fight. Everybody likes entertainment, whatever. We're all humans. But to me, I think one of the things that is holding us back is when we're not in election cycles, or if people we have elected disappoint us, or aren't doing things the way you believe they should be doing it at all times, we basically just throw the baby out with the bathwater. And by the way, there are YouTube hosts, there are tweeters who are instilling that mentality. I mean,
nihilism. Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Whether the squad has let you down or not, whether, Nina Turner didn't go to the march you wanted her to go to, fill in the blank. It's almost like we're going to focus on all of this shit rather than actually come together in a constructive way and leverage our power. Steve, we talked about it. Imagine if the millions of people that protested for George Floyd last year, if even 1/10 of them withheld their business from whether it be Amazon, big box stores, fast food. It just seems to me we're looking ahead for the next 5, unless something dramatically changes now, we're looking at a 5 to 10 years of circular firing squads on YouTube or whatever other platform people then go to, and maybe some small victories in terms of electoral politics, but essentially just kind of doing this endless hamster wheel of rage, ranting, canceling everybody, but not actually organizing to do anything.
Here's my focus. I literally believe this, and I'll layer it for you. Okay. I believe, number one, we got to focus on economics, because there's no way to be free. There's no way to be getting a Green New Deal. There's no way for healthcare. There's no way for any of this stuff if we don't have a core understanding as a movement, as a people, if you will, for that the government can do it all. We can do it. Stop saying we can't. We can do it. That's number one. Number two is being able to understand that we have some principles that we organize around. And if we can organize around those loose principles, we can debate strategy till the cows come home. Strategy is something that should not divide us. We should be talking about that and we should be exercising our ability to influence each other, but we should be working together to know that we're fighting for this core set of things, this core, that not too narrowly defined, but this core thing that we can all kind of get behind. And then the other thing is really, really building institutions that, like I said, that where we can continue to organize those boycotts you're talking about, organize direct actions, network with unions, network with other NGOs and stuff like that, or of like mind, and start building power from the grassroots, real power, not waiting for a politician to give us the okay to do it, but building that power. Take a look at Fred Hampton. Take a look at some of these groups that have done these things and start mirroring what they did, not the modern stuff people are trying to pull, but the folks that really, really lost their lives demonstrating how to get it done. And so I think that that's the next piece. And I think that that could be splintered into several layers. We have an electoral strategy, we have an organizing strategy, and we have a direct action kind of strategy, and we have a mutual aid strategy. I think that if we have that kind of layer cake there, that as we go forward, we can put pressure simultaneously, because we can't keep doing orphan politics, one thing here, one thing there. This is all a cohesive issue. Green New Deal must happen yesterday. No more dick. I mean, that is a big deal. Must have a Green New Deal. Must have a Green New Deal. Must not lose sight of it. We are literally burning up. We must have health care. We cannot lose sight of it. We must have the ability to educate our citizens so that they can contribute to creating the sustainable future and participate in it, so that they too have an economic freedom as well. And so each of these steps plays into our ability to really hold and maintain power and then fight the oligarchy on those terms. This whole just being angry and throwing spaghetti at the wall isn't going to get it done. And I mean to tell you, the Pete Peterson Foundation, if you all don't know who that is, Pete Peterson created this thing called Fix the Debt. Pete Peterson Foundation is filled with the Nancy Pelosi's and all the Republicans. It's not just them or the other. It's all of them. All the neoliberals in a true bipartisan framework are there to fix the debt. And so this kind of organized propaganda is what we're up against. And unless we get serious, instead of going out there and playing games, and we start focusing on doing the dirty work behind the scenes, we're going to get what we get. And you can complain, you can whine, you can bitch, you can moan. But the fact is that we're combatants in a war. You can't think of it as just sort of casual society. You must think of yourself as a combatant in a war and start taking it just that seriously. Or you're an executive in a boardroom, or you're something other than just a person that can pass. I don't feel like doing activism today. I'm going to go play tennis, or I'm going to go ride my bike, or I'm going to do something else. This is a war. And it's maybe an idea war. It might be a mental revolution, but real people are dying because we're not doing that. So to me, the real story is layer that cake, get that structure in place, and focus on wins wherever we can find them. I want to say one thing. I just interviewed a guy named Robert Hockett, who is an advisor to many of the politicians, especially the ones that are working on this infrastructure deal. And I talked to him at length about the infrastructure plan. And the first 1.2 trillion, I think it is largely what he called Eisenhower style infrastructure. It's just literally the basic blocking and tackling that we're all used to seeing. The 3.5 trillion that's out there is really kind of that future proofing and sustainable type stuff that they're not really interested in, that there's like a divide on. And so if you think about this, the one good thing that came through this, or that will come out of this, is that they're investing infrastructure in providing broadband into the poorest regions of America that are currently without internet connection. That in and of itself is huge, because if we get to them and we can organize with those people, once they have access to information and so forth, now you've got a real ability to organize at the grassroots in places where people really are desperate, and that they can take that fight with us. So there is some good here, right? But the problem is that the vast majority of our country, not us woke people, not us, focused on digging and stuff, the vast majority of us pay about 15 minutes of mental energy to this, and we're off to our lives because our lives have been brutal and they suck. And so this is what we focus on. So those people do vote. And unless we reach them where they are, whatever language we need to reach them with, we need to become sellers of our ideas. We need to become advocates for our ideas in a way, because we're not here to preach to the converted. We got to preach to the people that don't know this message. And that means that just because we like screaming and yelling doesn't mean they're going to hear us. We've got to get to them by any means necessary. Let's take Malcolm X's words and let's turn them to good use. Let's use our power of reason and our power of mind and our energy to go door knock, to make phone calls, to get into those town halls and start sharing our ideas instead of just complaining and whining that somebody's a sellout. I think that's really important. I think that's our way out of this.
And before I read the super chats, one last point. By Rant just said, I have no idea where to start. Well, it's pretty simple. Cori Bush just strolled out a couple, 2-3 weeks ago on the Capitol steps. People call it a photo op, whatever. I call it, she's the reason millions of people haven't been evicted yet. If that's a photo op, great. It's a good one.
Give me more.
But let me ask you, imagine if there was an organized structure in place, continual organizing, not just during elections, not just during crises, but all the time, that you wouldn't have to wait for Cori Bush to get out there. In the beginning of this pandemic, people could have gotten out there on the Capitol steps.
Damn right.
Occupy Wall Street, occupy Congress. If everybody came out, maybe not in the beginning because it was so much more deadly and contagious, but now people could have went out there weeks before Cori Bush did and camped out night after night. It would have drawn media attention.
Get organized.
Right. It would have drawn media attention. And you know what? Maybe that would drag, maybe that would light a fire under Cori Bush or whomever. Call it a photo op, call it what you want, to join you. So it's not mutually exclusive. Yes, we should demand that these politicians fight like they said they were going to, but don't just wait for them to do it all. Don't wait for any politician to do it all. We could do it. And we could be out on those steps. We could be out in front of your local ABC, CBS, NBC protesting. It doesn't matter if it starts with 10 people. Build. Because sitting at home, and I mean, I want you to watch this, but sitting at home and just bitching how it's all for naught and it's hopeless and all of this is, I mean, I just see it now. Cori just put off evictions until fall and winter, Jordan. Cori could have been out there weeks ago. Yeah, that's true. But should we just ignore that right now? There is no evictions because of Cori Bush? This is the point. Do not let perfect be the enemy of the good. We're not talking about incrementalism here. We're talking about stop only. God forbid I sent out a tweet, Steve. I think it was the first time I've ever did it, crediting Joe Biden for getting us the fuck out of there. Yeah, we got to monitor. Are we actually leaving? I mean, we've already left Iraq 3 or 4 times at this point. But we all want to end the wars, but the president is pulling us out. Yeah, he's a warmonger. Yeah, he's a corporatist. But you can't say it's not allowed to credit somebody. It's not allowed to actually be happy that a politician stood out there and got media attention, by the way, while shaming the Democratic Party. She was calling out the Democrats by name while out there because, it's not permanent. Well, she can't do it on her own.
No.
Hello.
Think about this, Jordan.
We need to. We could have been out there a year ago, not protesting for eviction moratoriums, protesting and demanding canceling the goddamn rent. So it's not either or. Yes, demand these politicians do more, but we're not without agency, folks. And it is easier said than done. A lot of people work in multiple jobs. A lot of people taking care of their kids. People can't get out there for nights after nights or weeks after weeks and protest. That's fine. But there are a whole lot of people that can. So we could sit in fetal position with a thumb up our ass and just rant and rave for the next 5 years about how it's all for nothing and everyone's a fraud and a sellout and a coward. And I'm sure for this, I'll be called a fraud and a sellout. I don't give a shit. I'm not here to, get thousands of live viewers by doing the lowest common denominator and creating a clickbait orgy every day. I'd
Just
rather
imagine, Jordan, if they would not have sat there and gotten caught up in social media wars and all the other bullshit, but if we had actually organized when we're talking about these economic issues, my receipts go at least 7 years to saying this stuff. So I know for a fact that as of 7 years ago publicly, and I was doing it before that, but 7 years for sure in the capacity I'm in now, if people would have listened or even considered it at the time, when Cori Bush did that, we would have been right there to say, we got it from here, girl. We're going to be out there because we've got this organization and we mean business. But we don't do that. Why don't we do
the
that?
establishment does it.
They do it, but we don't because we're all too busy trying to be the leader. We can't possibly stand that somebody else might have an understanding of something that we don't know. And so what ends up happening is this whole division by ego. And so that's part of the problem right there. Instead, all that wasted time, there could have been organizing and people could have been communicating, building communication paths, building networks, and real systems that really, really, really produce value. Think like a damn business for a minute. They're the ones we're up against. We have got to organize at least that good. We've got to organize that good. They've got the money. They got the technology. They got the time. They got the expertise. We've got to find the time to do that. And if that means putting off game night or whatever else, or playing some video game all night long, if it means putting that off and working to develop ways of organizing together, then yeah, that's exactly what it means. Don't complain about the world if you're just going to sit there plugged into a video game. It's time to get the work done. Roll up the sleeves and get to it. And this is what I'm afraid is happening. This, I think I told you just before, there is no guarantee that this story ever becomes a good story. This could be the worst story of all. It could be the end of days. And if we don't do something about this stuff, well, what the hell? I mean, why are you bitching at them? I mean, yes, they have a responsibility, but we have a responsibility. We know the truth. It's time to take action and stop allowing the factional stuff. I get we don't want the neoliberals trying to guide us into nonsensical crap that fattens wealthy people's wallets. But if we organize outside of that sphere, then we can dictate that sphere a hell of a lot more than what we're doing by just yelling and throwing spaghetti at the wall.
Right.
My take.
And just in response, Carne Verde, be careful that with that "don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good" statement, Jordan. You won't want to sound too much like Obama now. See, that's what you're not getting. Phrases don't matter. This is, what I'm saying is not like cheerleading for crumbs or acting like crumbs is somehow amazing. What I'm saying is don't get into a mentality where you can't see anything good, where you can't see anything positive. For example, right now, I mean, it might not happen because of, the 9 Democrats that might block it. But right now, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Joe Biden have agreed to a $3.5 trillion reconciliation package. That is the largest social spending package in modern American history. And it's not because of Joe Biden. It's because of Bernie Sanders. He played hardball.
Absolutely.
He said, I will not vote for your bipartisan privatization scheme, the $1 trillion infrastructure package, which only really has $500 billion in new money, if we don't have a $6 trillion reconciliation package. I mean, that was all posturing. He knew he wasn't getting $6 trillion, but corporatists like Tim Kaine and others have said the only reason it's at $3.5 trillion is because of Bernie Sanders. So should we shit on that? Because you know what? He's a coward, or he folded like a cheap tent during the campaign, which I've said, by the way. And he was weak during the campaign, which I said right away. Should we just ignore that this package gives us free community college, universal pre-K, significant money towards the climate crisis, expanding Medicare, dental, hearing, vision, lowering Medicare? These are not incremental things. These are things that would not have happened alone with a President Biden, are happening because of Bernie Sanders pushing it, and in many cases behind the scenes greasing Biden's wheels while not ranting and raving like we wanted him to. So let me ask you a question. If Bernie Sanders was president right now and this was happening, this 3.5 trillion, would you say it's terrible? Because it doesn't give us Medicare for all right away? No, you wouldn't. So the point is, if you can't see anything positive, I mean, I have someone on Twitter right now in response to me crediting Biden for getting us out of there. So I beat my wife for 20 years, but I stopped on year 21. Congratulate me. That's how you sound. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Anyway, let's get to the super chats. Thank you for all the super chats. Kami John, $5. A little Grumbine for the afternoon drive. Very nice. Looking forward to hanging with Status Quo crew tomorrow night at Real Progressive headquarters. Join us. So, Steve, how do people join at 9:00 tomorrow? Jen and I are going to be on.
So on our website, realprogressives.org, we have a sign up under, I don't know if it's RP Live or our national outreach, but either way, I'm sure that one of our guys in the chat will gladly put the link to the sign up for this. It's a webinar. So you'd sign up and you'd get access to the webinar. So it'll be good stuff. 9:00 tomorrow night. We'll make sure we get that link in the chat. Kami John, send that link, brother.
Right. Lana Del hates the clock. $5. Fear of big numbers. Oh boy. Hi, Steve, Jordan, and gang. Hey, thanks. 86 Blackberry White, $5. The war in Afghanistan was a waste of lives, labor, and materials, not taxpayer dollars. Hashtag LearnMMT, hashtag Real Progressives, hashtag Status Quo. Completely agree. Mark Fabian, $5. U.S. citizens don't finance U.S. government spending. U.S. government spending finances U.S. citizens in the first place. Very well said. VA from New York, $10. State-based healthcare is not Medicare for all. It's a neoliberal policy designed to render Medicare for all impossible. Just saying. Kami John, $5. Jordan and Jen, join us for RP Live tomorrow night. Hope to see you all there. P.S. Love the show, Jordan. Thanks again for bringing Steve on. Happy to do it. Lana Del hates the clock, $5. Steve, would you briefly talk about hashtag jobs guarantee?
Yeah. So, the beautiful thing about a federal job guarantee is it sets the bar, the floor, if you will, for employment. So if you say that we want a federal job guarantee set at a minimum of, say, $20 an hour or $15 an hour, and it's a federal job, it gets federal benefits, you name it. Now, all of a sudden, we can federally fund it, locally administer it, and the local community can choose what it wants to fund. So that your job, you're not working for the man. It's not make work. It's not dig a hole, fill a hole. And it's definitely not forced labor. This is an opportunity to walk away from a bad job and not be destitute. Or if you get laid off, you have a job waiting for you immediately rather than being unemployed and living off of like a subsistence wage of the employment benefits. But it's also something else too, which starts at the beginning of this conversation with the military industrial complex. If we have kids that are coming out of high school and they don't have a job and they can't find work and so forth like that, the opportunity to come out of high school and work in a federal job guarantee job allows them to choose something other than the military. And so this is an opportunity to once again get the military out of our lives, to start that direct spending on a federal job guarantee goes straight to the person. And now all of a sudden they can make different decisions, but they're also doing very vital, profitable work, not work that is going to make the man money necessarily, but work that is socially profitable, work that is good for the community, good for their spirit, good for their lives. And so federal job guarantee provides an alternative to unemployment. And before someone says a UBI, one of the most important things about the job guarantee is that, number one, it is in your local community. It can be done any number of ways. People that are considered disabled under the current regime would be able to participate in a job guarantee where they could maybe make phone calls to, an elderly person, or play online chess with someone, or read books to kids, or any number of things. So they are no longer cut out of the economy and treated as other. They suddenly have an opportunity to serve their local community in a way that maybe was never available to them before. It's a really great program. Hopefully people will get behind it. It's part of the Green New Deal also.
Absolutely. Thanks for the explanation. Jamie Horder, new YouTube member. Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate you signing up. VA of New York, $5. Jordan with Real Progressives tomorrow evening. Indeed. And Jen. Jen will be joining me if she's feeling up to it. Jen, if you don't know, Jen had to stay back when Colin and I left Flint. She had to stay back for an extra 5 days because she became very, very ill. She's had long haul COVID symptoms. I mean, now for almost a year. And she got so ill that she didn't know if it was still COVID. So she didn't know if she had gotten COVID again. So she was basically bedridden, went out to get tested. But then, the doctor said, quarantine until you got the test back. So don't fly. So she didn't get the test back for 4 or 5 days. But it was negative. But she's getting these flare-ups because of COVID, because a lot of people in this country, and we don't know how many at this point, have this long COVID with secondary issues. Jen, as she has said, has a secondary nervous system. It's called POTS. I don't want to.
Plain old telephone service? No, I'm joking.
Yeah, I don't want to explain what it is without being an expert. But she had to stay back. So she's really, I told her, rest up. I mean, you're not good to anyone if you're, killing yourself to do this. So, she'll try to join us too. Jaybird, $9.99. Yummy, yummy. Steve Grumbine, a feast for the eyes and the mind. Thanks for parsing this for us. Well, there you go. I mean, he's a good looking dude too. Millennial Splaining with Bess Godin, $4.99. Absolutely a poverty draft. Great stream, guys. Thank you. Annie Ann, $5. Do you think with bought and paid for lawmakers will ever get social programs when the only place those exist is the military? Steve?
Well, I go back to this, guys. In fact, let me just say this. Donate to Status Quo all day long. Become a member. Support this stuff. But as for us, we're a nonprofit. We're looking for volunteers to help us build chapters across the country. We want to do this locally. The only way this is going to happen is if we get boots on the ground, if we get organized local by local and connect this neural network of progressives. If you guys will help us, we're here to do it. We're a bona fide 501c3 for the education, and we are a bona fide 501c4 for the activism. So if you guys can get past any kind of factionalism out there, there's room for you here. We want you, we need you, and we're hoping that we can grow so that we can do all the things that Jordan and I have been talking about. But by all means, please support Jordan's work, because I don't think there's a harder working investigative reporter out there right now than Jordan. He's the one guy who I go to that I know that if I share something from him, I don't really have to even think twice. I know that it's going to be solid reporting. And, that to me, the idea of politicians doing our bidding, so much of what they do and don't do is a direct result of our lack of ability to be organized and focused and not just throwing spaghetti at the wall, but really define what we want and stay focused, not get distracted. So do I think we can do it? Yeah. Do I think it'll be hard? Oh, you better believe it. If it wasn't, it'd already be done. So I think that it's up to us to make that happen. And again, you've got an open invitation to help us start building chapters across the country with real progress and action. So
and I could say, I mean, journalism is my activism, but like I could say when I go Flint, other places, I mean, other than the residents, there's very little organizational structure around these residents, from Flint to indigenous communities. You had Standing Rock, which was, by the way, an impressive feat of organizing. It's not easy to get 15 to 20,000 people to come anywhere, much less to North Dakota. No offense to North Dakota. So we need groups like Real Progressives that are organizing and trying to build structures for activism or organization to kind of complement, the on-the-ground journalism, which, trust me, there's very little of the on-the-ground journalism these days. Thank you, Jessica. My 1999. Thank you. Look at Biden's plan of HARPA and the community of hoped.org behind it. Look at Delaware scandals, medical examiner, dirty money, cartel bank, chicken factory pollution, 19 million grant to Chinese pharmaceutical, DuPont. My head is spinning, Jessica, with all that. Do me a favor, email me, info@statusquo.com, info@statusquo.com. Kind of break that down, everything you're talking about. I'd love to hear about it. Delaware, speaking of, where Uncle Joe, President Joe, is from. Chris, $2. I don't shop Amazon now due to status quo and go elsewhere. I'm glad to hear it, because trust me, the power they have is you guys spending on it. Not by you guys, mostly like comfortable suburbanites. But if you don't need to use it, don't use it. Presidents, $10. Do progressives have enough energy and numbers to create an effective movement? If not, the debate about whether to work inside the Dem Party or outside is legit. I'll take this one. It's not a matter of do we have enough numbers and energy. We do. There's a lot more people in this country that want these policies than the corporatists. It's the progressives have the critical thinking left. I think that's what's missing. It's not the numbers. It's not the energy. I mean, sure, we're all tired. We've been fighting now for 5-6 years. A lot of people longer than that. Occupy Wall Street, civil rights movement. But we have the numbers and we could have the energy. But right now we don't have the critical thinking skills to see past the eating ourselves alive to do anything. And by the way, if not, the debate about whether to work inside the Dem Party or outside is legit. Here's the thing. I don't want to speak for you, Steve. I don't give a fuck if you vote for Democrats, if you work outside the Democratic, Dem enter, Dem exit, whatever. I care about seizing power, winning. That's all that matters. And the corporatists and the Democratic establishment understand that. So if Nina Turner is running as a Democrat, which, by the way, I've said was the only option for her, Green Party's not on the ballot in Ohio. MPP wasn't on the ballot. You can't run as an independent during the primary. And trust me, she would have lost by 50 points if she ran as an independent in the general election. Whoever wins the primary in most of these very, very blue districts, it's over. They've won. They crushed in the general election. Go ask Tim Canova how running as an independent worked. He got 5% in 2018. Yep. 2016, he had a real beef. I mean, they illegally destroyed ballots, all that. 2018, I mean, he went off a little bit. There was no election fraud. I looked into it. He lost 5% because he ran as an independent in a very, very blue establishment district. So do you feel better that like he didn't run as a Democrat? He lost by a lot. So again, all things are not mutually exclusive. If you want to build a third party, I got nothing against that. I'd love a third party tomorrow. I'd love a fourth party and a fifth party, and to be like Britain and other countries that have 10 parties. But at the end of the day, it doesn't need to be all or nothing. You could work on a third party without saying, no, if they have a D next to their name, done. Canceled. Doesn't matter what they've done. Doesn't matter their track record. Doesn't matter what their policies are. Doesn't matter that Nina Turner, for example, in that same establishment Democrat district was running ads for Medicare for all, not Medicare for some, not expanding Medicare for all. Was speaking at events, campaign events for Medicare for all. So this whole I think people are presenting a false choice that let's stop repeating the same mistakes over and over. It's insanity. Well, did you have a problem going to Bernie's rallies? He was running as a Democrat. Did you have a problem donating to Bernie? He was running as a Democrat. Do you have a problem phone banking for him, knocking on doors? He was running for a Democrat. So the person really matters here. The candidate really matters. And honestly, I think in 2016, it was the rare case. I think Bernie Sanders would have ran in the general election as a Green Party. I don't know if he would have won. I think he had a chance because I think Trump and Hillary were the most unpopular candidates of all time. But I think it's a false debate about you have to do it one way or the other way. Do whatever you want. I voted for Biden. I didn't tell people how to vote. I said, vote however you want. I'm just saying, I think you need to focus a lot less on the letter next to somebody's name and who they are. I also think don't get into this business of like, these politicians are not fighting. So let's project our rage at them and project it onto this politician over here that isn't elected yet, has a track record of fighting. Don't group people together and basically say, well, these people are sellouts and everybody here has let us down. So no, there's other candidates other than Nina Turner that have good policies, have good personal stories that I'm impressed with. They're running as Justice Democrats. Okay, so we don't like what the squad who ran as Justice Democrats is doing. Let's just get rid of, let's not even hear what they have to say. Again, self-sabotaging nihilism. Lastly, Jessica Mai, $4.99. Can you watch my grandmom's abuse video? I don't know what you're talking about, but if you want to send it to me, sure. info@statusquo.com, info@statusquo.com. Steve, any parting words?
Yeah, I just want to say that every time you said something about a candidate, and I know I already know what the third party inside of myself, much less our movement, says, right? And in their mind, they're like, never a Democrat, never. But I'm here to tell you that I'm not even here to tell you about Democrats. I'm here to tell you about, if we don't organize outside of this thing, every 4 years you're going to have to rebuild everything again. Every 2 years you're going to have to rebuild everything again. So regardless of who you're supporting, know what you're supporting, know what you're fighting for. You're anti-imperialism, good. You're anti-war, great. You're pro-healthcare, perfect. You're this. But ultimately, when you think about a revolution and you think about all the things that entails, just know that revolution isn't an event. It's a long arc. And there's a lot of little things that have happened. You look at the Haitian Revolution going all the way back to like the 1750s. There was a guy that nobody had ever heard of. You still haven't heard of him. Okay. And now I'm going to butcher his name, but in my interview with Pascal Robert, he talks about this guy who was an African who basically became mythological by killing people with this poison. But that was the beginning of the Haitian Revolution that didn't take place until 50 years later with Toussaint Louverture, and then eventually the real father of the revolution, Dessalines. But that took 50 years. Okay. And they were slaves, and they were sick and tired of being eaten up by flies and beheaded and gutted and everything else. We in this country, we're busy playing Xbox and PS5, talking revolution and getting angry and throwing nasty comments on Twitter. Until that changes, nothing changes. So just keep it real. Yo.
And by the way,
that's the deal.
And by the way, at the end of the day, Dem Party, Dem Exit, Movement for a People's Party, Green Party, Alien Party. One of the things that I noticed on the campaign trail in 2016, and one of the reasons I think Hillary Clinton lost to Trump, besides being an awful candidate and corrupt, was this mentality of, I was there covering it in Iowa when she put up her hands and said, we don't have time for some, I don't remember the exact phrase. We don't have the time for some hypothetical theory of Medicare for all. People need help now. Well, the reality is, obviously she was talking for her donors. That wasn't really what she believed. But in a way, the progressive movement needs to start focusing not on a 20 to 30 year strategy, because I got news for you. Nick Brana might not like it. MPP might not like it. I'm not here to prop you up or attack you. I'm just telling you what it is. It's reality. That is a long-term play. A third party is a long-term play. Anybody telling you otherwise is either good-hearted but kind of naive or misleading you. It is not easy to get ballot access all around the country. Once you do, you need to have a strategy to break the media blackout of third parties and combat look at what just happened to Nina Turner running as a Democrat. Wait for what happens to third party candidates running in terms of super PACs and propaganda. So if the idea is we don't have time to wait, then you need to focus less on a one size fits all. We're only going to do this through a third party, or we're only going to do this through a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party, or we're only going to do this outside of electoral politics. It could be a lot of different things. Don't fixate on one thing, whether it's working within the Democratic Party, working outside the Democratic Party, only outside electoral politics, where people say, I'm done voting. it doesn't need to be one thing. And if me saying that is propping up the Democratic Party, well, first of all, I'm an independent. First of all, I didn't even vote for Hillary in 2016. I voted for Jill Stein, which still gets me shit from a lot of people. I only voted for Biden because honestly, I was out at these cult suicide rallies where Trump was basically talking like, a Klansman while nobody was wearing masks with, 250,000 cases a day. And I said, you know what? I'd rather deal with, Biden, Neera Tanden than fucking Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and Q. Okay. That was my own choice, not because I like Biden. It was very clear to me, I'd rather deal with, in this case, a corporatist warmonger that I know than this exploding conspiracy and white supremacist movement. But at the end of the day, stop focusing. I mean, you're fed this over and over by the same fucking voices on YouTube. Stop focusing on the Democratic Party and oh no.
Make them irrelevant.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, what is the best strategy right now to seize power? If it's supporting a candidate that happens to be running as a Democrat, then you should support that candidate. If they sell out like a cheap tent once they get in, have at it. Shame them, pressure them, primary them if you want. I'm not against primarying AOC and others if you feel they're not doing what they're fought to do. But at the end of the day, this monolithic zero-sum game, black or white thinking is why we're not organizing and why we don't have the structure Steve and I have been talking about. All right, we could go on forever. I got to go walk my dog. Steve, tell people where can they find you?
Yeah, please come to realprogressives.org. And let me just say one thing that I wanted to bring up the whole way through, and it just kept slipping my mind, but we're in the process of also, with all this campaign building and all this, chapter building, we're also in the process of trying to develop what we call a movement to end corruption. And I know there's other groups out there doing it, but through our podcast and our work on the new Untouchables, the Pecora Files, we're looking at Wall Street. We're looking at the housing industry. We're looking at BlackRock. We got our eyes right on these purveyors of evil that are stealing our homes out from under us. So as part of this, please find us and help us to bring this movement to a head. It's all part of the same movement, guys. And we have the people, the experts that have been leading it as one of the only feathers in my hat in terms of actual investigative journalism, which I don't hold a candle to Jordan, but our work with the con producers, Patrick Lovell and Eric Vaughn and Bill Black and Richard Bowen and all these folks is amazing. I'm begging you, help us watch it. We release a new Untouchables every Sunday night at 8 p.m., but find it under our media channel on our website, realprogressives.org. And I assure you, there's more than enough ways to get involved. And I hope you'll find us. And I hope you come catch us tomorrow when Jordan joins us. I mean, me and Jordan have been talking now for 3 hours? Because he did a podcast with me before we did this. So that'll be released next Saturday on Macro and Cheese. Anyway, that's it. Please, we miss you guys. Come join us over at Real Progressives. Help us out. And definitely become a donor, become a supporter of Status Quo. They are the best game in town when it comes to media.
Which is a great segue for me. And you could go, Steve. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, sir. Bye, everybody.
Great segue. We don't really always push the same thing at the same time. We haven't really pushed our membership recently aggressively. I mean, we were pushing the story we just broke, which we're not done with, by the way. Hopefully we have an update on that in a little bit, the Flint water cover-up. But right now we're at 1,910. 1,910 Status Quo members. That is our business model. Yes, it's a business. We need to earn enough money to fund reporting in the field, equipment, me, Jen, Colin, Tina, who has done some great freelance work for us, and her work. Obviously, we pay her. We got a lot of, to travel on these trips, flights, hotels, rent a car, food, equipment, what I just said, paying for me, Jen, Colin, and freelancers. We are maybe tomorrow we'll be launching it, but just totally redid our website, statusquo.com. So we'll be premiering that, I think, tomorrow. That costs a pretty penny. Just a lot of other things, accounting for taxes for the business. So you fund this. We don't take money from fat cats, Goldman Sachs, fossil fuckers, big pharma, big real estate, Silicon Valley, the military industrial complex. We had one investor in the beginning of this thing. It was a tiny investment of 50 grand. All it went to buying equipment and bringing, at the time, Tyon. That was from a viewer, not a bank. It was just from a viewer who believed in what we were doing. So if you can, we would, we've been kind of like circling around 2,000 members for a while now. We got close, but then coronavirus happened, and obviously we lost a lot of members because of tough economic conditions, circumstances for people. But we want to get past this. We want to jump over 2,000 and keep marching on. So if it's within your means, statuscoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as $5 a month. You'll get access to our monthly members call, bonus video content, behind the scenes content. So please, if you can, sign up, statuscoup.com/join, statuscoup.com/join for as low as a expensive cup of coffee per month. Really, really hope you'll join us. Tomorrow, we'll have our exclusive Rockfin stream, where we're live weekly exclusively on Rockfin. I just wanted to address that because we did have some Status Coup members, upset that we have, our exclusive Rockfin stream. If you're not a Rockfin premium member, you can't see it. And some of these streams have been covering, last week was a press conference at Amazon, where we thought AOC was going to be there, but she canceled the day before. We've covered other things live in the field just on Rockfin. And, Jen and I spoke about it, and it's kind of this, tough choice, because on one end, as we've told you, going live exclusively with Rockfin weekly, just once a week, is giving us a guaranteed revenue that we have not had before. YouTube revenue fluctuates per month. Other streams fluctuate per month. But Rockfin, our deal with them, we get a guaranteed amount of money per month. And that goes up once we pass 100 subscribers, the guarantee. So obviously, to lure people to sign up as Rockfin premium members, you want to entice them with, good reporting, good stuff you're covering. But on the other end, our business model, number one, our business model is our members. And they are the most, not that Rockfin people aren't important to us or Substack people aren't important to us, but our members are always the most important to us. So we will still be doing a weekly exclusive on Rockfin, because again, we have to fund this somehow, and we are not selling out and taking corporate money. So you got to find revenue in different buckets, because YouTube is certainly not funding at all. I mean, YouTube might be like, at this point, 10 to 15% of our monthly revenue. With that said, we are going to try and not, for specific in the field things, put it just for Rockfin subscribers, because we do understand, certain things like that press conference at Amazon, we want everybody to see it. And even though we do clip out live exclusives for Rockfin and post it on YouTube the next day, we do understand members, frustrated that they can't watch right then and there because they're members. They are, your feeling is you do support us financially, so why should you be locked out of Rockfin? We get it. So we're gonna, again, there will be a weekly exclusive with Rockfin that live stream. We will clip out things for the next day on YouTube, but we are going to try. We are going to definitely try not to, for certain things that are in the field that are really, really important news, just do it normal right here on YouTube. The other thing is, and I'm just going to keep it real for the people who, have been upset, you got to think intelligently in this line of work. You see how things are moving on YouTube. Frankly, it's not clear to me if channels like this will exist on YouTube in a year or two. That is why we are creating as many alternative streams of revenue, including Rockfin, as possible. I hope it doesn't happen, but we have to prepare for a day where we are, I don't even want to say it, but you get the drill. that we are not here. So, I understand if you're frustrated that certain things have been only on Rockfin. We're going to try our best to make sure really, really important stuff, like, covering the Amazon press conference, other things are not you don't have access to for the full stream. So hope that helps clear it up. We're doing the best we can, but at the end of the day, we gotta earn revenue to keep funding this and grow. So thank you for watching. See you again. We'll be on Rockfin tomorrow, but I'll do a short stream before then to kind of tease it. If you want to become a Rockfin premium member, you could do that. Rockfin.com/status coup. $9.99 a month for our premium content as well as other premium hosts. Obviously, if you don't have the extra $9.99 a month, we get it. No problem. We're live here 4 days a week, sometimes more than that. And of course, critical, important stories we do, whether it be Flint, environmental protests, Amazon, we're going to make available for everyone. So thanks for watching. Peace out.